Week 9 is in the books. We are beginning our recap of Week 9, heading into Week 10 of the NFL season. We'll start off with some of the recaps of each game. So on Thursday night, we had the Texans versus the St. Louis Rams. As you can see, the Rams had absolutely no problem taking down Houston. Houston with 5 turnovers. We had Tavares Jackson throwing 4 of them, and then Jake Locker came in late because they were just getting blown out, and then decided that he also wanted to add an interception to his career stats. Even Spiller had a hard time on the ground, 39 yards. Tavares Jackson got 37 on his own, whereas Andrew Luck, the first-round pick, not a great game. I mean, 55% completion, 147 yards, a TD, 2 interceptions. It was really Tim Hightower having a big breakout game. We see 103 yards, 3 broken tackles, a touchdown. Michael LaShore getting about 10 yards, not much. But Crabtree gets a touchdown in this game for the Rams, and we see the conclusion of Houston and St. Louis. St. Louis both tying the Rams now at 5-4. Jets get another win. So after going down, I think 1-5, they're now 4-5. You see Alex Smith there with a modest game, 197 yards, 2 TDs, 2 INTs. Quinn with 213 yards, a TD, and interception. The Jets were trailing most of the game, but then came back in full force. You see 2 touchdowns there by Clinton Portis. Chris Johnson with a TD, 84 yards. Quinn also getting a TD on the ground. Jeremy Shockey with 111 yards and pressing there for Indianapolis. But then Wes Welker was the man that bounced back for the Jets. 2 touchdowns receiving and 101 yards. Colts fall to 4-4, and they are trying to maintain their division status. However, they are falling behind as the Texans now have firmly passed them, not just because of the bye week. Chiefs squeak out over the Chicago Bears. Bears are leading the NFC North, and so Campbell with 152 yards, 2 TDs, not good enough. On the ground game, as you can see, not really any stellar performances there. Brandon Weeden did not do great. He had 83 yards and a touchdown, did get injured during the game, so Kevin O'Connell came in, only threw 20 yards, but he also had a touchdown. We see Kevin Smith rushing more than Trent Richardson, 56 yards to 53, had more attempts than Richardson, and had a touchdown over Richardson. But in this game, this was a good win for the Chiefs, trying to get out of that bottom barrel of the league. Their first-round pick is in the hands of the Atlanta Falcons, so losing does not help them get a higher pick. We see the Bears with 5-3, still in charge of their division, but kind of wanted to create more of a gap between them and the Packers. Now you have Cowboys getting crushed by the Giants. Giants there, Carson Palmer, 3 touchdowns, 146 yards, very efficient. Ryan Matthews with 181 yards, really taking care of the ball. Tywan Jones gets a TD. Webb, who's been the starter for the past few weeks, struggled, 90 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions, 10 yards on the ground. Peterson, who had like a really good start. I think he ran for 75 yards on the opening drive, and then after that, as you can see, it went from 4 attempts the entire game, and then 19 attempts by Joe Webb throwing the ball. So definitely not the direction they wanted to take. Cowboys 2-6, Giants 4-4. Then we look at the NFC South, and the Atlanta Falcons with Peyton Manning just obliterated the New Orleans Saints. Saints falling down to 2-7. We look at Josh McDaniels definitely on the hot seat, likely getting fired, as this team has not made the playoffs last year, but are just abysmal this year. Peyton Manning, 262 yards, 2 touchdowns. He didn't have to throw as much as he did because they were winning. We see Kellen Moore. Caleb Haney actually did a fake field goal pass. That's why he has 12 yards there. Willis McGahee, 102 yards rushing, 3 TDs. Peyton Manning ran a TD in. And then he's like on the goal line, so he just a quick run there. You see Braylon Edwards and Larry Fitzgerald just 1 yard apart, with Edwards with the TD, Bubba Franks the tight end, a quick tight end touchdown there. But Manning looking like Manning, and he does lead the league in passing yards. We'll see his stats later. Where am I? We have the Green Bay Packers, who fall to the Minnesota Vikings. So after a rough start for RG3 this season, he is starting to get into a groove, getting his team back to 500. 201 yards, 2 TDs, looking good. No rushes for him in this game, though. Doug Martin, only 37 yards on the ground, but they didn't need to worry about that. They were able to come away with the victory and hold off the Packers. Stafford with 233 yards and 2 turnovers. LeSean McCoy with 94 yards and 3 touchdowns. Good play there by him. And Randall Cobb, Julian Edelman leading the way for the Packers offense. But again, they were trying to make up that ground with the Chicago Bears. Had they won, they would have been close to tying them, but they fall about 1.5 games behind. Another win for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going 8-1. Panthers fall and go to 4-4. We see Blaine Gabbert with 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, a perfect QBR rating, slightly shy of 200 yards. McFadden, 122 yards rushing. Josh Gordon, who is right now on track, I believe, for the Rookie of the Year, the way he's been playing this season. Jerome Simpson with a touchdown. Flacco, 2 interceptions, about 194 yards. It's an average game for him. Ben Tate comes in because Booker was injured, so Tate gets 66 yards. Torrey Smith had a great game catching for Flacco, but they still lose by 13 points. The Titans shut out the Bills. Freeman kind of bounces back. They've been having an up-and-down year. We have 134 yards there, modest game, but it was Stewart with 152 on the ground, and Greg Jennings, 99 yards. We see Ponder just with 2 turnovers. Deji, D-E-J-I, Karim getting the start over Williams and Deuce McAllister. 75 yards for the young man. But you can see passing stats not great because Ponder kind of bombed. Then we have the former 2012 Super Bowl matchup, Ravens versus 49ers. Not going to be the Super Bowl matchup this year, considering the Ravens are now 1-7. Colin Kaepernick having an absolutely awful year, 117 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. Ray Rice nowhere near his MVP level last year or caliber last year. We see Drew Brees, 212 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 TD. Arian Foster, 87 yards, all pretty distributed evenly among his receivers. But 49ers move up to 6-3. Eagles have no problem with the Broncos, 24-10. Eagles are continuing to move up in their division. We see 233 yards, 2 TDs for McNabb, 81 yards for Frank Gore with a touchdown. Tight end John Phillips, of all people, gets 96 yards receiving. Bradford, who has started to have a decent season. I mean, he had some bad his rookie and sophomore year, starting to get it together this year with 4 wins. We see Perriman and Bradshaw with about 81 yards combined. We have Sanu and A.J. Green, the 2 real Bengals on the Denver Broncos, leading the way with receiving as much as they can with 162 yards. The Cardinals and Seahawks. This was a huge game. You see both quarterbacks with 5 touchdowns, both quarterbacks with 2 interceptions. Difference here was 236 yards by the Cardinals, and then you have 395 yards from Peyton Manning. Rushing was definitely with the Cardinals, surprisingly, with 95 yards with Brown, 25 with Sproles, a touchdown with Brown. Lynch got a touchdown, but only 44 yards. We see Josh Morgan netting most of those yards from Eli Manning and getting 2 of the touchdowns. Brandon LaFell getting 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Dallas Clark doing most of the work for the Cardinals. I'm trying to remember if there was a special teams play. Was there something here that carried somebody? Maybe was it a defensive score? No, okay, yes, there's no. Anyway, tight game. 1 point separating these 2 teams. Seahawks come away with it. They're now 4-5. So I know I had a lot of hope for the Seahawks to be a good team this year. They had a lot of weapons. Started off slow, but now they're fighting their way back. Then we have the Dolphins getting the win over Jacksonville. So Nick Foles, the rookie, is still having a rough career start. Newton, who has had a rough start this season, despite making the Super Bowl last year, gets 3 TDs and 267 yards. Matt Forte, 110. Calvin Johnson Jr. just nets most of them. He's just a cheat code. And then you have Steve Smith, 120 yards there. Foles, 189, but some turnovers. DeMarco Murray does get 100 yards, but that does not change the fact that Jacksonville is looking pretty bad. Then we have the New England Patriots continuing their win streak, going 8-0 on the year, defeating the Commanders. Now the Eagles have surpassed the Commanders for the division lead. Vic with 155 yards, 50 yards rushing, only a TD. He did have a fumble, but he does have the TD. Brady with 225 yards, Charles 116. No real standouts on the receiving end. But again, 2 good teams who faced off on Sunday Night Football. Patriots keep their streak alive. If you saw the video that was just posted recently, the Browns fall to the Steelers at home. Browns had 6 straight wins, now 3 straight losses. Prior to 12 yards, 2 TDs, 2 INTs. we see Felix Jones, Bell sharing about 100 yards together. Big Ben, 4 touchdowns, 345 yards, all-star there. Emmanuel Sanders, and then trade acquisition, Hagen, getting an early touchdown for the Steelers. So looking at the standings breakdown, we see Patriots are clearly in the lead in the AFC East. Miami and the Jets are they're talented, so they're fighting their way back. The Browns are now 1 game ahead of Pittsburgh as opposed to the bigger gap they had before. Bengals back now to 500 with Harbaugh. Ravens terrible. Texans take the lead in the AFC South, so that's an interesting change of pace in the South. Colts and Titans are fighting for that second spot, trying to get that extra win over top of Houston. Chargers, Denver, Oakland, all tight with about a game in between. Chiefs now finally getting a little bit more respectable with 3 wins. Eagles take control of the East and the NFC. Commanders right behind them. Dallas still working their way, chipping their way to the division, or at least a playoff spot. Dallas still bottom. We see Chicago at 5-3. Vikings now second in the division. Packers fall to third with by 0.5 games. And Detroit still at the bottom now at 3-5. Tampa Bay leading the NFC 8-1, looking flawless here. 3-1 with 5-0 on the road, 3-1 at home. We see the Falcons with Manning bouncing back. They had some bad weeks. Carolina 4-4, Saints bottom of the division. And then the NFC West, very competitive. Every team is about 1-2 games apart. San Francisco had I think it was a bad week last week. 5-1 at home, 1-2 on the road. We see them likely to the Super Bowl champions trying to fight their way back. And so you can see kind of the playoff picture there with a lot of competition. Nothing's decided anytime soon. As we go to stats, I'll go through this a little bit quicker just because for the sake of time in the video. But Manning at the top, 2,600 yards, really doing well. And you can look at these however long you want, but top 5 there, all quarterbacks you'd expect. We see touchdown leaders, Manning and Newton at the top with McNabb and Brady. Interception leaders is Whedon, Griffin. We see Andy Dalton now at 14 with Freeman at 14, Smith, Roethlisberger, Pryor. So some double-digit interception leaders there. Rushing, we got McFadden, who is already at 1,100 yards after just 9 weeks. We see Clinton Portis, Spiller, McCoy, and Chris Johnson. Touchdown leaders, very similar. Bradshaw shockingly getting 10 on the year with Marion Barber, who's filling in for the injured Beanie Wells. Receiving, we have Calvin Johnson now past Greg Jennings. He is leading the league with 1,100 yards. Greg Jennings with 1,000, 2 of the best receivers out there. The Ted Ginn, 3rd. Sanders, 4th, with Wes Welker, 5th. We see Larry Fitzgerald right on the cusp. Touchdown leaders, Calvin Johnson, easy, along with Deshaun Jackson and Ted Ginn, Edwards, Andre Johnson. I'll go a little faster here if you want to take a pause at this, at who the top tackles are. Now top sacks. Geno Atkins now 0.5 ahead of Ray Edwards. Interceptions, Justin Miller continues to stay at top. And then Ashton Yabuti is at number 4. Kicking. I don't think there's anything else worthwhile sharing. I'll just go quickly here through the rankings. Atlanta now number 1 on offense. San Diego number 1 on defense. And worst offense, Jacksonville. Worst defense, the New York Jets. So hopefully you enjoy this video and this update of our 32-team franchise. Next week, we have the Patriots versus the Panthers on Sunday at 1 o'clock. Apparently is the highlight game. But yeah, I'll see if you want more game content, let me know. I'll try to get more videos like that. If you're good with these updates, that's cool too. But thanks for coming along this journey. Feel free to like and subscribe as we grow this channel and grow this long-standing alternate reality of the NFL.